Welcome to the Round 6 Podcast, a weekly roundtable discussion featuring a variety of automotive subjects, interviews, special guests, and stories, hosted by the Round 6 Gearheads, Brian Stupski, Alex Welsh, and Brad King. Here on episode 43, the Gearheads are honored to be joined by legendary builder and all-around nice guy, Dave Lane of Fast Lane Rod Shop. Well, hey, I didn't see you come in. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Brian.
I'm Brad.
Alex.
I'm Dave.
There we go. With us tonight, if you aren't looking around the room, we've got Mr. Dave Lane with us from Fast Lane Rod Shop. Thanks for joining us, man.
You bet, no problem.
This is yeah. I'm not going to fanboy this at all. Like I told you earlier, I don't like any of your music, so or your fish.
Oh yeah.
So, how are things going by you, sir?
Real good, real busy.
Awesome. I know you've been spending your days sanding hood louvers.
Yeah, I'm finishing up on a project that one of the last things I usually do is the hood sides because they're the most brutal, and that's where I'm at right now. I got about 8 days planned to sand and buff 2 hood sides. That sounds pretty sickening.
Alarm rings in the morning.
Oh man!
Thank goodness for minimum wage.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 8 days into 2 hood sides. I didn't devote, I think, 8 full days to raising 3 kids.
And that might be easier. And I got 2 boys. So
I feel your pain, man. Three boys. Yes, so we're no strangers to sights, smells, and physical pain. So it's
cool.
If you've had a lot of long-term kind of relationships going with like a steady, almost like a revolving, a group of patrons or clients, customers, however you want to put that, partners in cars, I guess. To me, that's a really cool thing with you because it really harkens back to kind of describing hot rods as being fine art. You know, if you look back at the history of art, there were always the patrons, these guys, you know, whether they were popes or just, you know, rich dudes hanging out who needed something to hang on their wall. I always wanted to kind of ask you this question, and it was, you know, how do you groom a relationship like that? Is it something that just kind of happens organically? Or, you know, is there a set point where you guys just look at each other after a car or two and say, we've got to do this again and again and again?
Well, you know, that there's a long answer to that. I've been really fortunate with the people that I've worked with. I've been doing this full time since I think 2001. And I've never approached anybody to build a car. I've never solicited anybody, anything like that. I've always had people come to me, and we've always gelled. And in fact, the cars, actually, the people that have asked me about building a car, that maybe it really wasn't the right kind of car for me to build, I would help them find the person that, you know, find the shop that would be perfect, good fit for them. You know, being just a one-man deal, I don't need a lot of projects to keep me busy. What I did intentionally do from the start is I set out to only build complete cars, and I knew that I had to do everything here myself because I'm out in the middle of the cornfield, and so I'm not going to get local clients. I'm not going to have a revolving door. So the people that I'm going to build a car for, they need to be able to accept it's going to be a, you know, possibly 2-3 year project, and it's going to start and we're going to finish it. And you're going to have to be able to allow me to work 40-50 hours a week from the beginning to the end. So that weeds out, you know, that involves a different type of customer. Well, I was fortunate enough to become good friends with George Poteet, early on, and by doing a car for him, that kind of helped get me a little bit established, and him and I kind of see eye to eye on certain styles of cars, and so he would just let me run with he'd say, let's build this, and he'd hand me a steering wheel, and we're going to build a car around the steering wheel, and that dictated everything pretty much, and so I was real fortunate to. What would happen is you're only going to, the customer you're going to get is going to be based on basically the last car you build. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I built was going to draw the person that I wanted to build a car for. And it just really worked out well that way. So what happened is everybody that would approach me, usually I was 3 to 4 years out. So that gave me time for a long job, a long interview. We're both, basically, I looked at it as we're interviewing each other. I want to know that without even talking about money, that they can afford to do this, and it's not going to crimp the rest of their lifestyle. And we wanted to build the same thing. I got to build what I want to build in order to put everything I got into it. And I don't want to force them to build something they don't want to build. So we've got to want the same thing, and then I can just run, and then it's all good. And so what happened is I ended up kind of drawing the right people. And so everybody I built a car for, I've been best friends with ever since. I've never had a bad customer. And then there again, you kind of end up doing multiple cars for the same people because it's been a good experience for them. That was a long answer for a.
No, it was awesome. Thank you.
No.
And in fact, one of my other things that kind of helped is I always tried to make sure that when I got a car done, I wanted, roughly that the best time to do it was like when the car was first finished and debuting where we're going to take it for the first time. I wanted my next customer to hang out with that owner. And then I would I'd introduce them. Of course, they probably knew each other, but I wanted to talk when I was not there, so that the truth comes out. Then everybody's going to talk good about each other when you're all standing there. But when I walk away, then the guy that I just built the car for can tell the new guy what he really thinks. And I knew that would usually be a good thing, and it always paved the road for a good experience on the next car, because I think that would put them at ease, that they felt trustworthy and don't worry about it. It's been a great experience, a lot of fun, and so I never, basically, I've billed a customer since 2001 every month, and I've never had as much as a question about a bill. I've never had one time in all those months where somebody looked at a bill and then said, "Well, what did you do here?" or whatever. They've never questioned anything, and I think I've just been very lucky that way. But then again, I intentionally, I tried to set out to get that kind of person that wanted the same thing as I did. I wasn't trying to convince them to do things, And another key that I've always done is that I've always said that the car's got to have what it's got to have, but I'm not the kind of guy that's going to keep spending because you got money. And so I've always told people, when the car's done, we know it, and you could tell me you got $50,000 more, let's keep going, and I would give you a car with a briefcase with $50,000 in the trunk, because we didn't need to spend it. We didn't need anything else. It had what it had. I've never put a stereo in a car. I've built, the cars that I built since 2001, I've never put a radio in them. None of them really needed a radio. They shouldn't have, they didn't need one. It was the fun of the cars in it, listening, going through the gears and hammering and all that. And so, I think in that respect, they trust me. And so I guess I've just been lucky. I've intentionally tried to draw the right guy, and it really worked out well. Like I said, Phil and Deb, they're the nicest people in the world. You just can't even imagine. And George is great, and Alan Button. Every one of them. Floyd, I hate to say the names because then I leave somebody out, but every one of them has been just a wonderful experience.
Awesome, man. And I am so tempted right now to have a giveaway on the podcast and say, we need somebody to bribe George to show up at your doorstep with a Spark-O-Matic radio and a pyramid amp and say, build me a car around this, Dave.
A pyramid.
Oh, that's funny.
Because you can't find Tandies anymore. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's what this, so it's, you know,
Some Jensen coaxials.
from
Well, see, I'm getting
from the middle of the
nostalgic for stuff.
cornfield. All I hear is you
know,
screaming, curse
The stuff
you.
that I've been nostalgic for lately is the stuff that I had like in high school, and so I've been kind of nostalgic because I don't know how old you guys are, but I was born in '64, and so an Alpine stereo
Oh
in the
man.
car in the high school parking lot, man, that was it. I mean, that was, you know, and so I can just remember the little green square buttons, you know, the backlit buttons on
Yeah.
Alpine. That was just,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, we're all about the same age, and I
Yep.
remember as a kid, you know, my older brother Chris had a 68 Chevelle and it had a Pioneer Super Tuner in it, and it was the
Oh.
underdash one with the big dial on it. And
You
I remember
bet.
he couldn't afford it. He had a minimum wage job. He found one out of a car that had been rolled like 30 times, and the thing was bent like a parallelogram, and he straightened it out. But it still worked great.
I know
The car or the
you're talking
stereo?
about.
The car was absolutely destroyed, but
Right on.
he was able to wedge himself inside the car and get the stereo out of it. And I think he paid like $5 for it. So, it worked great. That's back when Pioneer made a pretty good piece.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, I remember that stereo. My cousin had a 69 or a 70 Chevelle SS with a 427 in it, and it had
Ooh.
that stereo in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember those days. They were.
Well, that Mickey Thompson 50 Indy Profiles.
Yep.
I drew that. I would draw cars, and I am no artist, but everything I drew always had those had slots with Mickey Thompson 50 Indy Profiles on it.
Had to get N's because they didn't make O's yet.
Yeah. Yeah. N50s, man. Yeah.
And 50s. Oh, badass, man. That was. Now you look at them; those things are just tiny. But
Yeah. Yeah.
A little tire.
Okay, so speaking of stuff like that, what was the first car you ever put the Dave Lane touch on? What's the first car you modified as, well, let's go back in time. Young Dave Lane, first car.
Well, I had a '73 Nova SS. That was my first car, and it had Krager SSTs and BF Goodrich bias ply on it. But I was 15 and I had a 353 speed, and it was a neat little car. Nothing, you know. Back then, I didn't have any shop classes or nothing like that. I played sports, and usually you couldn't do one or the other. I don't remember even why, but I just remember the shop classes involved after school. I think some, and so I was in practice and stuff. So I had cars like that, but I didn't really know much about them. I thought I did. I thought I knew it. You know, I built models since I was 5 years old and had Hot Rod magazines since, I think 5 or 6, and I was always into cars. That was really the only thing I was really into. But mechanically, until you built something, you can think you know something all day long, but until you built one, you kind of don't, and so I had that little Nova, and we had to put a clutch in it, and that was a real big deal, but otherwise I thought it was a hot rod, but it was kind of a dog, but it looked
15.
But then I had a 76 Trans Am for a while, and that was actually pretty fast. That was a 455 4-speed, but it just torqued crazy amounts of torque. And but really, what kind of turned the deal is my girlfriend then, now my wife. We in 1984 we went to the Hot Rod Supernats in Ohio, and which was really unusual for me. I to go to a car show out of state was really a big deal, and we went to that, and ZZ Top's Eliminator was there, and we just happened to get to the fairgrounds, and I don't remember what day it was, but we're just sitting there. Wasn't a lot of people around. I don't know if it was like the end of the day or whatever. We're just sitting on this little wall, like a small brick wall, and this guy's sitting next to us. And now there again, I'm just a little punk kid. My wife, or girlfriend, we're just sitting there, nobodies. And this guy starts talking to us, and it was Harry Hibbler, and I had no idea.
Wow.
Hand grenade, Henry.
You know, and there again, I've been reading hot rods forever and ever, but see, you don't really know anything. You think you do. You read the magazine and all this, you know. We're sitting there talking to this guy, and we said, oh, I can't wait to see that car tomorrow and everything. He goes, well, you know, we're right next to this building. He goes, it's just inside that garage door right there. Because you want to go see it. And, you know, there again, you got this little kid from nowhere, Wisconsin at the time, you know. Sure. So he took us in there. We got to sit in it. You know, the whole deal was just unbelievable. And the next day they had it outside, roped off. You couldn't get 30 feet to it. You know, I mean, it was unapproachable from then on. And we drove home, and I had sold the car I drove there in, and thought I got to build a hot rod, and didn't know nothing about nothing, and found a 28 Pontiac 2-door sedan in a paper that was completely apart. I mean, there wasn't nothing assembled on the car, and brought it home, trailer and 2 truckloads of parts, and just proceeded to start trying to buy some tools. And I did this while I was putting myself through college, working full time. So I was going to school full time, working full time, and trying to build this car, which I knew nothing about. I borrowed a friend's compressor and worked in a garage that was unheated in Wisconsin. It wasn't insulated. So I remember being out there. One time it was 30 below, and I was out there trying to work on it. I mean, it was insane, but you had to take advantage of any time you had, because I didn't have much time, you know. We're making $5 an hour trying to pay for all that, and it was a pretty interesting 3 years, but I got it done.
Wow.
Jeez.
So, but that's what turned it. Because when I saw the Eliminator on the Give Me All Your Lovin' video, it was, I remember standing in a stereo store, buying an Alpine stereo, in fact, actually, and that video came on, MTV just started, and just watching that thing go down the road, it was like, oh my God, there's nothing like that. There's nothing. Yeah. I liked Chevelles and Camaros and all that kind of stuff. And then when I saw that, it was like, holy shit, that's it.
A ZZ Top video from that era is like the great litmus test. It's like, well, son, what age are you at? And you got to see what he pays attention to, girls or car. Yeah, although to this day, I've got to admit, car.
Yeah.
Dave, to put it kind of in perspective, like the Legs video where they're at the gas station, or were they in the ZZ Top video? That's just directly west of here. Alex kind of goes by that on the way to work, kind of goes out that direction.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, how cool.
I thought you were going to put it in a deeper perspective. You're going to be like, hey, you know when that video was made? And they were like, yeah, when Brad's going to be like, well, yeah, I just turned 37.
That was mean, man.
Yeah, I remember that video too, and that was right around the time that the Eastwood and Bearcat car came out, and I started getting the same kind of thing as you. I wanted a hot rod really bad, and they were just kind of out of my reach price-wise. So I felt like it's never, ever going to happen, and so it's still a bucket list car for me, for sure.
Yep. Oh yeah, that was, well, that Pontiac cost me, I think it was $750, and then I ended up having to buy another one because they had it for parts. Even though it came with all the parts, it came with so many parts, but the body was so apart and had all the wood, and I'd never get that together. So I bought one that had a body that was still assembled, and you know, of course, you know, I spent everything I had, but it wasn't a lot back then. But that was. It's tough, but that car, that you saw that going down the road, you couldn't. I don't know how anybody could watch that video and not think that was cool. I mean, it just, you know.
Yep.
But then look at how it affected people. You could have pulled up in a red 46 Ford later on. Hey, that's a ZZ Top car.
Yeah, it's funny.
No, it's not.
You're right.
If it's got headlights that bolt to the fenders on stands, everybody thinks it's a ZZ Top car.
Exactly right.
You just gave me a great idea. We need to make a movie about an alternate dimension where it was never the Eliminator car. It was like a Fiero with pontoon fenders. This is going to get even better.
That was always the truth. Anybody with a red car was a ZZ Top car. It didn't matter what it was.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, big question though. Did you have the ZZ Top keychain hanging
Yes,
from
I
your...
did.
Nice.
Yes, I did. In fact, if I looked around for long enough, I could probably find it around here.
I searched
Yeah,
high
I
and
did,
low
man.
through my house one night to find mine. And we were talking about cars we had. And I was like, oh, yeah, I had like 4 of my cars hanging from the rear view mirror. Yeah, it's one of those things you get and you never like let go of. It's weird.
Yep.
Man, so, wow, Kate, moving on from the first car, what came after that? Or but what happened to that car?
The 28, what happened is I finished that in, it would be like June or July after 3 years. And my wife, my wife, we got married and we were going to move overseas. She was working for the government then, for the Army, as a civilian. And so I sold it in the fall. So I only had it 3 months and sold it. And then we moved over to Germany and lived there for 4 years. I'd worked for the government for 11 years total. I used to do network design. That's really where my education basically is at. And when we moved back to the States, then I started, doing stuff in the shop at night and everything. I had actually bought a 35 Chevy 3-window coupe that was a hot rod, and took it back to Germany for a year. And then when we got back to the States here, typically what you did is you hauled cars overseas and you could sell them, make a lot of money on them. Mm-hmm. What happened? I was kind of an idealistic kid, and what happened is I bought it here. I actually bought it at the Good Guys Indy, and drove it to the East Coast, and then we shipped it back, and then we decided we're going to move back to the States a year later. Well, I couldn't sell it. We had just had a kid, and I looked at him and I keep thinking, it made me mad to watch people sending stuff over to overseas, thinking our kids are never going to have those cars because everybody's shipping them over there. So I couldn't be part of it. So unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, we ended up shipping it back, and then I went through and redid that car, blew it all apart and chopped it and did all sorts of stuff, and drove it for a couple of years and sold that. And then I had a 32 Roadster and built that. And then I had did my 59 wagon. That would have been in, I think, 2000. And then from then on, I started building other people's cars and didn't build nothing for myself until I did the Galaxy just a couple of years back. So, the wagon would have been the last of anything I built for myself for a long time, which was kind of unusual because it was so different than anything I built for other people,
Right.
Pretty much built 32s. I did almost all 32s. I did the 40 truck for George, and I did a 34. I think everything else has been 32s.
I've always been a wagon guy, so when you brought that wagon, I was like, oh, I like this cool. A lot.
That car was so much fun. We put 13,000 miles in that car in 3.5 months.
Wow.
Whoa.
But you know what's neat about that car is a friend of mine, Kelly Page. He's the guy that did the woodwork and the delivery. Well, he would come out when I was building the wagon. He'd just come out and he'd always call it the Big Ugly, and we'd laugh about it and everything, and the whole time I'm building, I'm thinking, if I want to do this full time or whatever, why am I wasting my time in this car? It's never gonna get me anywhere. It's not gonna do anything for me. But I just kept thinking, but how much fun, and the kids are gonna love it, And what happened, and this is what's so neat about building something when you have like zero expectations. You just have none at all. Well, I took it on a power tour. So I left here. I think it had 75 miles on it, and drove it out to California, and then we did the power tour back. And I would call home every night, because my wife and kids were going to meet me at Indy. Good Guys Indy is where we were going to get off the power tour. And I said, you're not going to believe this. You're just not going to believe this. People just love this car. It's the funnest thing. And that's what happened. It was one of these that I just couldn't believe how many people really liked it, because it was always just look at it just a family car. We're just going to, pile the kids in and just go. And so that's what it was so cool to do something with just no expectations and just watch people just really think it was a pretty neat thing,
That's awesome. Oh my God.
we we took my oldest son. He had a birthday party, and so we piled in 13 kids. They wanted to go to the skating rink and go eat pizza. And of course, all the kids want to ride in the back seat, because they're third, so you kind of switch off. But we had 13 kids piled in the thing. Well, so we go eat pizza, and of course, they brought their skates. And so I got to pay the bill for pizza. So all the kids run outside, and they all want to jump in the car. And I look out there, and one of his friends has got his skates, his roller skates, and he's twirling them, above his head.
Oh.
And they're just clearing the roof of the car as he's doing that. And I'm coming out the door of the pizza place, looking at that, thinking, "Oh God, I can't say nothing because I don't want him to stop. You got to be Oh, good. Nothing happened or nothing. But it was just one of these where, oh my God! But those kids, they had so much fun cruising in that car. And you just pile in,
That's crazy. When we were younger, though, station wagons were always looked on kind of disdain. It's like, oh, you guys got a wagon. It was kind of basically the sport utility of today. I mean, if you've got a family that's more than 3 or 4 kids, you almost had to have a wagon or a big full-size car. But exactly. And then a lot of us now look back on them like, man, I would love to have another wagon because they're so convenient. Just like for you guys, taking all your kids everywhere, everybody gets to have fun. And plus, they look really cool when they're done. I just wish that no one else would have figured out how cool wagons were, and I wish they were still the same bargain that they used to be. They're not anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A good one. And with a wagon, you've almost got to buy one that's all complete and in pretty good shape because some of that stuff is not reproduced.
No, and it's so specific to a wagon that, you're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Everything from the driver's door back is pretty much unique.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got so lucky on that one. That was back before the internet. So when you needed a part, you had to go to swap meet or whatever. You couldn't just Google it, or you couldn't go on eBay. And I needed one piece of trim, and we have a junkyard that's about 10 miles away from here that used to have a bunch of cars, and they keep scrapping them, all this kind of stuff. And they had a 59 there, 159, and it had one piece of trim on it that I needed. And I got so lucky because the car was pretty. It was gutted, but it had everything on it. But it didn't have an engine. It was pretty ratted out. But luckily, it had the things you needed because, like you said, I mean, that was all unique stuff.
Yeah.
Is that car still around?
Yeah, and in fact, Good Guys has been using it in some of their promotions lately. The guy's last name is Cox. He got quite a few 59s. Randy Cox. I hate to say his name now. But they've been showing pictures of it, and I know it was down in Texas for a number of years. The guy down there, I met him, and he was having a blast with the car. I think he must have had it 5, 6, 7 years. I had to get rid of it because I don't do well taking care of them, and I was just driving the hell out of the car, and I knew if I kept it, I was going to just beat it up because it's one of these where you work so hard to get it done, and once it's done, I'm driving it. I'm done working on it now, and so we sold it after I think it was the second year.
That's cool. That's cool that you drove the crap out of it like that. That's what I want to hear. Closest it came to a trailer was parking next to one. That's my kind of car.
Well, my Galaxy, I mean, that was even more. I mean, I got 27,000 miles on that, and that was really in the first 2 summers. And in the first trip, I left the house here with 300 miles and got home with 6,400 miles.
Wow.
With that Good Guys tour, I drove it out to California and then drove it on the tour to Nebraska, then down to Dallas, and then Dallas home. And in fact, it was kind of crazy, is that first 300 miles before I left was like a brutal 300 miles. I mean, I couldn't go 10 miles and something was wrong. It was the weirdest car. I've never fought a car so much, and just weird things would happen. So I thought, there's no way I can drive. I'm not going to leave the house and go that far because I haven't yet. I couldn't go 20 miles without a weird problem, and so I got lucky. I mean, the next 6,400 were pretty much trouble free. Who would have thought? I mean, I mean, even as much as I'm getting ready to leave, okay? It was Sunday morning, and I'm getting ready to drive to California, and I open up the door. The dome light stays on, so I bend over to flick the dome light switch thing in the pillar, and I click it, and then the little bulb thing pops out, lands on the ground, and now it's lit. It ain't gonna go off. Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, so luckily that was a new part. It was all new parts that kept going. Luckily, I had the original one, but of course, I cut the wires were a little bit too short, so I had to lengthen the wires to get them to fit. This is where I'm like in my driving clothes. I mean, I'm ready to roll.
Yeah.
And that's how that car was. I mean, but it's been good ever since. I mean, I've been lucky there. But yeah, it's got like 27,000 on it.
It looks like a nice
640
driving car. Those Galaxies probably ride pretty nice.
God, it's the best. But truthfully, it's all the suspensions, everything is brand new, but it's factory stuff, except, of course, the springs are a little bit different, but it's got Air Ride Technologies, Ride Tech. Brett sent me some of his shocks, and that's everything. I mean, that is absolutely, that car is unbelievably stable. That car is so fast, and I've never once felt like it's floaty or it's getting out of hand or anything. And it's everything to do with shocks. I mean, you go up an overpass, and the car never bounces. I mean, it just goes up, comes down, right back down to where it should be. It's all about shocks.
Huh. Yeah, I'm a GM guy, but I love the 63 Galaxy. That is such a good looking car. And
beautiful.
Yeah, and to have a camera in it, it's like, yeah.
Yeah. I wish
yeah.
I could have done that. I couldn't, that's a whole nother echelon,
That's at the top of the cool level right there.
Yeah.
So when you started the shop, what was your vision for the shop? Say 10 years down the road, when you're sitting down, you're figuring out your business plan, or did you have a business plan? Even better question, I guess.
I did. It was all in my head. I mean, basically, I'd been working for the government for about 13 years, or 12 or 13 years, and I knew. First, I knew I didn't want to manage anybody. If I wanted to manage people, I'd stayed there. So I knew that I wanted. I was going to build cars. I mean, that was the whole deal. And honestly, I mean, it was one of these things that growing up as a kid you could never fathom. I mean, I could have never dreamed in a million years that I'd actually be able to do this, making a living. I mean, I couldn't even have it as a goal because it wouldn't even been a thought. It would have been so incomprehensible. So, what happened, I'll never forget the night, is I come in, because there again, I was working full time, and then I'd get home and work out in the shop to usually 12 to 1 in the morning. And then I'd have to get up to go to work at 4:45. And so I did that for, a handful of years, and you're just kind of living on the edge constantly of just, because a lot of times no sleep at all, I mean, it just kind of varied, but, and what was happening is my kids were just starting to get to the age where they were going to want to play sports and everything. And I wasn't going to miss that. So, something was going to have to give. Well, at that time I was doing George's Green Roadster, the first car I did for him. I had a friend that, out of Virginia, that wanted me to do a really nice 32 Roadster with a Brookville body. And I knew George was going to be good for another one if this Roadster turned out well. So I thought at that point, I got 3 cars lined up. That's, I was building a car pretty much I could do it in a year at that point. So I thought I got 3 years lined up here. I can't expect somebody to line up after that, especially doing this part-time. So if I'm ever going to walk, that's the time to do it. And I'm walking away from a government job on 5 weeks leave. I mean, it was great, yeah. but I just couldn't fathom doing that for a lifetime. And so, at that point, I mean, I knew that I wanted to build them. I'm always funny about when people say they did something and then you find out, well, they didn't really do it. Just like when somebody says they built a house. Well, they didn't really build the house. They kind of overseen the building of the house. Right. And I don't know why that was always a trigger for me, that I feel like if I'm going to tell somebody I did something, then I did it. It's not like I had somebody do it, and so I was pretty adamant about making sure that I did what I said I did. And plus I knew, I think I said earlier, that I knew that where I'm located and stuff, I have to have a project that's going to last a year or 2 years at least, and customers that are willing to do that. And I can't have half done projects and stuff. So so it was in that part. That was kind of my business plan, is to make sure I'm always got a customer lineup that can afford to do a complete car, and I'm not going to do small stuff. So basically, I could tell a customer that I can't tell you when I'm going to start on it. I can't tell you how long it's going to take, but I can tell you what I'm going to do before I start on it. So they knew, and I said, and I'm never going to take anything else. So they could see what I'm working on, and they knew when that car's done, their car starts, and we're not going to stop until it's done. So, George would always laugh at people that would talk about building a car, and they'd go somewhere else, and he'd always laugh and tell them, you're going to regret it, because you're going to go to that guy, and you're going to bounce you around. It's going to get dusty, and and that kind of thing. And if you'd have stayed with us, Dave, it would have got done sooner in the long run, and so, in that part, that was my business plan, basically, and to try to do this until I retire. I mean, that was my whole goal, is can we make this work? And it worked out, I'm pretty close to the end right now. I've always been 4 or 5 years out. And so I've been fortunate that I can pick, I can be real picky about who I work for, and that's good for both. I mean, I want the person I'm working for to be totally comfortable with everything. It's a marriage, and we're going to be married from here on out. I mean, once the car's done, it's not like you go away. I mean, we're going to be friends, and it's going to be a good thing. So I want to make sure that I get the guy that enjoys doing this, like Phil and Deb. I mean, they're amazing. They refuse to have a bad day. They always, when they visit, it's all good. They're excited about everything. Phil is crazy talented. I mean, this guy can do really good metalwork. He's creative and like I said, really talented. But he acts like when he walks in the shop, he acts like I'm just the god. Oh my God, how can he do that? He can do most of the stuff I'm doing, but he's just that kind of guy that he's just so generous and just such a good guy about it, and just wants to have fun. And I mean, that, it's tough, but that's what this is about. I mean, if you're not enjoying it, then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
It's so weird that, none of this stuff is needed. So if you're doing it, you got to try to have fun doing it, and it's going to be tough, and it's expensive, and there's rough days and stuff, but it's supposed to be fun, and they're really good about making it fun.
That seems to be a hallmark too of a lot of the people who build multiple cars. They all have a really positive attitude, and they're the people who really, really get it. They understand. It's like, hey, this is what it takes to build a car. If there's a setback, it's just part of the way it goes. You take a couple steps forward, you get knocked on your rear end, you pick back up, you do it again. And it's
right.
kind of funny to see that. And I couldn't be happier for you to know that, it's like the universe came together and said, you are the perfect guy to build these cars for these people. And not to get philosophical, but that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing.
It's just, well, it has been. I've been so blessed, and that it's just, it's crazy. It's a dream. Like I said, it's one of these I couldn't even set it as a goal. My goal really was to see if I can make this last. I mean, if I can just keep building a car for somebody, and then so everything that's happened, has all been frosting on the cake, because I just wanted to build the best car I could, and so we got pretty lucky along the way. But those were never any of the goals. Like you said about the customers with multiple cars and stuff. It's good that once somebody's been through it, then they kind of understand the ups and downs, and the nature of it. And so they're always the best customers. They're the best. Because it's tough. I mean, and that's why I always feel bad about, you go to a show, and I've always felt that, nobody at a show is getting the real recognition they deserve. The guy that wins everything almost got what he deserved, and everybody else didn't get nearly as much, because of how much work they are, how much dedication it takes, besides the money. but you've got to be so dedicated for something for so long. And so you just feel bad because there's just not enough attaboys to go around. And so, I walk around the shows a lot of times. I like to just stop and talk to people that, you can tell they're just so proud of the car. And I get it because it took so much work to get it here. And somebody's got to just tell them good job, because it's tough. I mean, I remember building that first car, and if I always tell, especially younger guys, I like to tell them, especially people are trying to do this nights and weekends, and don't look around, don't look up, and don't look around. Look at only what you're working on, because if you allow yourself to keep looking around at all the stuff left to do, you'll go in the house. I mean, it's overwhelming.
That is true.
If you're out here sanding louvers, and you're going to keep doing that for the next 10 days, you look around, you got more to do. You're going in the house, and so that was what I had learned on the first car. And because I swore when I finished that first car, I'd never do it again. And I just like I think when a lady has a baby, the first thing is that they're never going to do it again. And then once they have a baby, it's like, oh my God, they want to have another one, and that's how I felt, man. That first car, going through that, it was so brutal. And but once you get that feeling of accomplishment, that you created something, it's a tough thing to not want to do again, and you kind of quickly forget the pain. And I'm sure you guys have been all you guys have been there, and
yep,
it's a good feeling, when you get the thing done. But God, it takes so much.
It's funny you talk about the dedication there. I remember when I built my dad's El Camino. I built him a '72 Camino, and the first 80% of the job. It sounds funny to say, but that's actually the easy part. It's that last 20%. I hate my life, because it doesn't seem to end. So you get your little notebook and you're making your list. It's like, okay, you're at that particular part of the car. It's like, okay, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. Well, crap, I'm looking at the back, and you're adding. So you got like 4 pages of just crap. And you're going, okay, I'll check off this and I'll check off this. And you go, shoot, I just added 2 more pages.
Exactly.
Pretty soon it feels like you're writing a book just off of checkoff stuff. You go, this is never going to get done. But you keep getting it, and you keep getting it. And pretty soon you go, hey, I only got a couple of pages left. There's actually light at the end of this tunnel. So it can be done, but it just takes a lot of dedication. You got to just, hey, I started this, I got to finish this. So.
But it's tough. It's easy to take them apart. It's easy to bring that old car in there and start unscrewing all the screws and then bolting everything. That's why you got so many cars that aren't done, because man, because I don't care how much budget you're trying to do it. It still costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And and when you're 3/4 the way done, you got a big pile of parts and a whole bunch of money. It doesn't look like nothing. And you just got to keep going and and there again, it's gotten easier, when you do this during the day, you can get a good, easy 10, 12 hours in a day. But man, when you're trying to do it nights and weekends with a full-time job, God, I give that guy a lot of credit. I mean, I used to be that guy, and I just don't know how it happens. I mean, you come home, you're beat, you got kids, you got to run them around, you got stuff to do, and lawn needs mowing, everything, and you got to try to get something done on a car tonight, and so you get a couple hours. Well, that's just so little progress. But if you just keep, like you said, you just got to keep doing it. And it gets to a point where you stop adding things to the list and you finally check something off and you don't add another one, and that's tough.
And it happens. You'll get it done. I mean, but like you said, you have to work on it every night, or or at least every other. I mean, you've got to stay with it. Once you stop, it's really hard to get focused to get back on it. So,
yep, you're exactly right. But that's what's tough is, I mean, you do that for weeks and weeks and months, and you really don't see much progress. It is just tough. That, like I said, that's why you just feel like when you go to these shows and you just think, man, everybody here, and I shouldn't say everybody because not everybody's built it, but the guys that have built them, oh man, you got to give them a lot of credit because it took crazy amounts of dedication.
Yeah. You're kind of a rarity in the hot rod business, being as you're a one-man show. How can you tell us how you can make this arrangement work so well for you?
Um, I don't know. It was kind of out of necessity, really. I mean, when I built my car, I had to learn everything because I couldn't afford to pay anybody anything. So you just had to figure it out. And I didn't really have any background in it. What I did early on, what happened is when I finished college, I got a degree in business, and there was a tech school across the street from that college, which is about 20 miles away from my house. This was in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and so what I did is I knew we were going to be moving to Germany in a year, so they had a 1 year and a 2 year machine apprentice program. Well, the 2 year was the good one. The 1 year was not as it was more of an operator thing. And I think the 2 year program, I can't remember what they called it. Well, I knew I couldn't graduate in 2 years. I was going to be gone within the 2 years, but it was a better program. So I just took that. I took all the machine shop classes I could take for that 1 year, just on the hunch that I wanted to learn how to do this stuff. And then at the same time, because I'd never learned to weld yet when I was starting on that car, so at our high school, the shop teacher would stay in the evenings on like Tuesdays and Thursday nights. Now I was in college at the time, but he would I could bring my frame there, and then I could work on it while we were learning how to weld. Then I could learn how to weld and weld this frame at the same time. But what I had to do, this sounds just crazy, but what I'd have to do is I would get home from school, load the frame up in the back of the truck, take it to the high school. And this is like through the winter. I'll never forget, because like one night there was like 6 inches of snow on it. But what I did is I took it to the high school, worked on it for a while. Then I had to go to work, which I bartended. So I drove, loaded up the truck, take it to the place, bartend, and close up at midnight or 2 in the morning or whatever. Then drive home, unload this thing, and then go to school in the morning. But that's how I learned how to weld. And so it was one of these, but it was all just based out of necessity. If I didn't do it, I couldn't afford to pay somebody else. So, and that's kind of how when we moved back to the States, then I built that other car. I learned, I chopped the top on that. I had to figure it out. You just go through magazines and stuff, and then same thing. I got a TIG and I bought a mill and a lathe when I got here, just an old South Bend out of a high school. It was a auction, and the same thing with the mill. And luckily I had that schooling, so I kind of had an idea how to do that. And so, you just learned all that stuff. And then I knew when I was building the cars, like I said, I had to do everything here so that, I needed to be busy 40 hours a week for a year or two. And I knew I was going to do that. I was doing everything myself except for the interior. I knew that was a whole nother art form that you can always tell when somebody doesn't know how to do an interior, does an interior, and I just thought I can't be that guy. So, so I knew I had to farm that out. But like the sedan delivery, there was just the seats were done. So that car never left my shop. I mean, I brought the body here, and I built that car, never left the doors until it was finished on its way to California for the Roadster Show. And Kelly Page was the only one that helped me out on that. I mean, he came and he would do woodworking in my shop a couple days a week, and so otherwise, so that was really, that's how it worked, and it worked out great. I mean, because see, the other thing is I knew the kind of cars I was going to build. I was never going to scratch build, a hand formed body, and I've got an English wheel and decent sheet metal tools, but I only bought what I needed. And I didn't have crazy dreams of stuff that would be cool to build. I tried to look at it realistically on where my niche was. And I knew, I always liked like Brizio. I always loved what he did. So I always looked at it as I'm going to build that style of car, like a low-back car, those kind of cars, but I'm going to just try to do them really, really nice as I can make them. But not, it was and that customer was of the right age that those guys could afford to build those cars. They've been wanting to build them their whole life. And finally the business did well. The kids graduated, they're out of the house and everything. And they finally got somebody that can finally do what they want. So that was kind of the people I was hoping to target. And they were willing to pay for, they'd see the difference in a half inch here and a quarter inch there. They got that, and so, that, you know, it kind of worked out well in that respect. But that was really the gist of trying to do everything in house, was that that was my way of keeping busy, you know. And it was my first shop that I had, because my shops are on you know, on my property here. And the first one, I had a small work area and a booth. It was just a handmade booth, but it was a real small little 2-car garage. Well, I had to, you know, my assembly room was the booth, so I had to paint the frame last, because there was nowhere to go with it if I painted it first, and that's where the cars get put together. So you better not scratch anything, because you're in the booth, you know. And so that's how I built, you know, everything up until the sedan delivery. I mean, I built George's 5 window in that little building, and you know, it was a ratty little nothing. I mean, it was a really bad place. I didn't realize how bad it was until you start looking at pictures and think, oh my God, I can't believe I worked in there. But it didn't matter to me. I you know, it didn't faze me. I didn't have to have fancy stuff and everything. I just needed what I need, you know. And I when I see these guys that start out and they think they need to build a shop and have to have all the best tools, and they just bury themselves in debt, and then trying to find a customer. And to me, it's all going about it backwards, you know. I started having 3 projects before I even opened the doors. And I had already bought the tooling I had forever. I hardly bought anything. I built a new shop, and I hardly bought any new tooling for it. I kind of have all my old stuff, and I guess, you know, you kind of make do with what you got, and then you know, I knew I wasn't going to try to compete. I wasn't going to try to build a car that would be like Detroit Speed or something like that. You know, that's a brutal area to be in. I mean, the guys that are built, you know, between the Ring Brothers and Roadster Shop, those guys are, they're on another planet.
Oh yeah.
What they can accomplish and what they do. I mean, they're just, those guys are amazing. And same with Kyle, and I mean, you know, so many of those guys. I would hate to be in that niche. I can't even imagine competing with those guys. I mean, that's a, you know, and I shouldn't say competing, but I mean, you know what it is. I mean, you want to do good, and you know, and doing good doesn't mean winning things as much as just fitting in. You know, you want to build something that those guys think are cool, and that's a pretty brutal area. I kind of like the niche I'm in. You know, it's a little more traditional kind of stuff, and a little more straightforward.
You didn't want to check your body gaps with spark plug gapper?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you know, it's the machine work and stuff that's brutal. You know, I can make stuff in my little Bridgeport and stuff, but I don't have a CNC sitting there, you know, cranking out the kind of stuff that they can crank out, and you know, the more high tech stuff, you know, versus Hal brands and that kind of thing, you know, and you don't want that kind of stuff in the kind of build. So it really is it's a good fit.
Oh yeah, and well, you know, like they obviously have that look. They've got that high tech look down, but you've managed over the years to develop a real and there's a definitive Dave Lane look. You know, it's not a cookie cutter thing car to car. It's just you could look at anything you've touched and know that you've touched it. And I guess my big question for you on that then is, you know, how did the Dave Lane look kind of come to be? You know, what were your influences?
Well, you know, Lobeck, you know, a lot of the stuff he built, I always thought was just so badass. You know, it came from several. I mean, you know, Roy always built a decent car. All his cars always had a neat look to them. But you know, I remember when I would go to shows early on and trying to learn how to do this, I'd always try to find the nicest cars I could, and that was the level I was shooting for. And so I remember when Boyd did that yellow, this yellow 32, I can't remember what they called them, a Maroc type style of roadsters, and he had that at Louisville, and I spent hours going over it and just looking at fit. And so, you know, I kind of took a lot of fit and finish from anybody that was building something that was just as perfect as possible, you know, and not that I could ever be that way, but I mean, that's what you set out to do. And you come up short, but you're striving for that. But to me, it was always about proportion and stance. And so if a car, to me, if a car doesn't look good from 20 feet away, it doesn't matter what it looks like up close. I mean, it doesn't matter if the screws are all aligned and all that stuff, because it doesn't look good from the right distance away, you know. And so I was, so that was always important. I don't know why, but that was always important to me, that the wheel tire and the way the car's set, you know, and then try not to make it look like a Christmas tree. I mean, I always feel like I don't want you to see any one thing. I mean, if you stand and look at the car, I hope you see the whole car.
Yep.
And then if you look at it for a while, you start noticing things, but it takes you a while. You know, if to me, if you're looking at the car and you see something right away, it's like probably not good. I mean, it's probably it's standing out instead of blending in. You know, and then I always just looked at. I was always big on gauge panels. I just loved the old original style gauge panels and stuff. And so even like George's 5-window, you know, that was one of the first classic. You know, luckily John bought Classic Instruments. You know, John McLeod, and when he did, I met him. I met him shortly after he got it, and talked to him about doing a 40 panel. But I didn't want to put the 5 gauges in it. You know, I wanted to use an original panel. Can we do our own gauges and maybe put our own fonts and that kind of stuff? The previous owner, I talked to him about doing it. And he didn't even want to do as much as change the pointer color. You know, he just kind of had his thing, and that was what it was going to be. And so when John got it, it was like, oh my God, the world just turned upside down. You know, and so we did the panel for George's 5-window, and that was a neat little 40 gauge panel. Then we did the one-off panel for Alan Button's 3-window.
Dude, my favorite gauge ever. Seriously, that one on Alan's car. Holy crap, I love that.
That was, you know, that was so cool, you know, but that was all John. I mean, John, you know, he was just open to giving stuff a try, and that to me was just huge, because I always looked at it like when you looked in a car, you looked at the interior. I want you to see the material should kind of blend in. I mean, to me, it should all kind of just be there. If anything, you look around, you see the dash, the gauge panel should fit the car, but look pretty cool, you know. And of course, whatever kind of steering wheel you got on it needs to be the right wheel. But it was, you know, the big picture was, to me, you know, 20 feet away, you should be able to walk around that car and not see anything but a car. And it ought to have the, you know, the big tires in the back and the little ones in the front.
Sidewall. We like sidewall.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but everybody's got their own thing. I mean, you know, as much as I feel like there's a right and wrong, but the thing is, I want to go to a show and all the cars look like good cars I build. I mean, just like a Corvette show, you know, a 63 Corvette's cool to look at. 50 of them gets pretty old, you know, and
Yeah.
You know, so it's good to, you know, I appreciate all the styles out there. I remember a couple of years back at the Grand National Roadster Show, walking through the Lowrider building, and there was a car in there. Like, you know, now I can't hardly remember anything about it. It seemed like, of course, it was probably like a 62 Chevy, 63 or something like that, 64. But the car was just numbingly, unbelievably nice. It was,
Oh, yeah.
and then again, it had the crazy paint, everything. You just look at it, you're thinking, how many years did it take to paint this thing?
Yep.
It was done. And I remember talking to hot rodders, and they all saw that car. You know, it was the car that you would never think hot rodder guys would be talking about. And they were, you know, it was that unbelievable. And you just got to give the guy credit, you know. If it's not your thing or not, but you still had to say, holy crap, man, that thing is nice.
It's funny you mentioned that. The lowrider building at the Grand National is one of my favorite places to go. And I would never build a lowrider of my own. I would never. It's not really my style. But I go in there and look at the creativity and the quality of what those guys do. And it is just mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it?
It's crazy. Yeah, it's funny. You know, but when you start talking about some of your cars, I remember the one car that you did that I got a chance to really get up on close to and make a bunch of laps around was George's orange coupe.
Yeah.
And it was at the Grand National. And somehow I got separated from everybody. And at that point, I really didn't care because I just started walking around that car. It was on a display on its own, and I got a chance to do a bunch of laps around it. Then thank you, whoever did it. They had a build book that was there that showed all the things that was done to it. So I would look through the build book and there'd be one thing, oh, he shortened the grill shell. I'd walk and look at the grill shell. You know, oh, look, he recentered the front wheel in the wheel opening. I'd go and look at that. And that car just blew me away at all of the subtle changes that had been done to it. And man, great job on that car.
Thanks. That one, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I think I cut a 1/2 inch or 3/4 out of the shell.
What was that like to do, to cut on a 34 grill shell? It's like, man, I sure hope this works.
It was scarier now because I'm always good at, I tell you, I can mark something, I can look at it for a week, and the minute I cut it, I realized that was not the place I should have cut it. It don't matter how long I wait. 5 minutes later is when I'm going to figure it out. So I was pretty nervous. I had that thing marked off for a long time before I actually made the cuts because I thought I do not. You're shorting up damn bars and everything, and
nobody's really done that before. What was it that told you I need to shorten this grill shell? I need to kind of pie cut the front of this car. It works just so well.
Well, it was one of these. I just couldn't get the hood to sit right. I mean, I'd mock the hood up. I mocked the. Well, the front fenders. In fact, I'll back up. The front fenders on that car. She had never done a 34, and the thing is, like I said earlier. I mean, you think you know until you build one. You really don't, until you build a couple cars of that type of car, you really don't know them very well, and so I got my jig and I set the body up on the jig and I set the frame underneath it. And I remember that day. I'll never forget the day I'm going to figure out where I want to put the wheels and tires, and I got the front tires underneath the fenders, and it's like there was no place to put them. I mean, because the tops of the metal. Yeah. And the tops of the bead are two different places.
That's right. The crown of the fender and the wheel opening are two different spots.
They're like an inch apart.
Yeah.
And the problem is the crown is forward and the bead is behind. So the problem is if you move that tire forward to fit up in the crown where you'd think you'd want to have it, well, it was so far forward in the bead that it just looked silly. But the minute you rolled it back, it looked like, oh, even worse yet, you put it behind where it should be. I mean, that would be that's the death knell right there. And so I remember looking at that, and I keep doing something else, and to come back to it, try. I like to keep walking away. I don't want to make a decision right away. And every time I come back and look at it, it's like this is not. I just can't. And so that's when I just rolled it forward, cut the bead out of the fender, moved the bead, and it was like, oh my God. Well, you forget. I kind of forgot about it, and well, what happened is we parked I had it parked right next to another really, really nice 34 at Columbus, and it was side by side. And so I'm standing there, the guy's talking to me, and he was asking me about what I did on the front fenders, and at no more than he said that, and I'm standing a little ways away from the car, so I can look at the 34, and then I can look at the next one next to it, and it's like when you saw it, it was night and day. I mean, it was like, oh my, mine, the orange one didn't look fabulous. It's like the other one looked really bad. I mean, just because and I'm not knocking that car, but I'm saying is that, I didn't make something look great. I just fixed it, and you looked at another one. It's like, oh, see, that's what it's normally going to look like. And it was kind of the same with the shell. And I don't know why, but, I put the hood on the thing and it was just like, you could not get that body line. You never want to climb uphill, and
right.
And so I'm looking at that, and it killed me to start cutting because I'm thinking I'm doing something wrong, and something's not right. But I just couldn't. It wasn't going to happen, and then finally, I knew if I'd play with that shell, I'd move that shell down a little bit, and it's like this looks like it fixes everything just by a little bit, and I think it was 3/4 of an inch, and not a lot, but a lot when it comes to a hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just night and day. That car was so much fun. We took it to Indy to do the Hot Rod of the Year thing, and just got to just tear the hell out of it. And it was fun. It was really funny because I'd never actually driven a car in a drag strip before, and so I was peppering. I'm trying to think of the guy that was running the event. Brandon Flannery was one of them, working for Good Guys, and then Kirk was the other. And and we were doing the big drive. You got to do about 150-mile drive or whatever it was, and then you end up at the drag strip, and they want to see you run the car and all that, And so I was asking them questions about doing a burnout and everything. And I think they thought I was going to just really, I was getting kind of scared and all this kind of stuff, and my son was riding with me, and we pull up to do the burnout or whatever. And I like flipped the switch and just hammered the shit out of it. And I looked at I could see in the review mirror, I could see Brandon's face behind the car, and he's looking across at Kirk with his mouth wide open, his eyes just huge. I don't think they ever saw that coming. Man, I thought, I'm going down in flames, and we're going to make George proud, And but that car ran. That car ran really well. It was a 425 nail hood, and that was a crate. It was a brand new in a crate 425. I don't know the whole story and how it ended up where it was, but we got it from a guy out in California that does nail heads. And his name escapes me now, Martin or something like that. But it was just such a nice engine. That thing ran so good.
Good looking car, and I always was going to ask, when the car debuted, it didn't have hood sides on it, and then later on the hood sides came along, and the hood sides to me it just completed the car. But was there a reason why the hood sides weren't ready? It just didn't make it in time, or
no, it was kind of,
you were still wet sanding them,
louvers.
No kidding, probably no. What it was is, see, I built the car to be able to run without hood sides and look nice. So I made a whole different hood mechanism. The latching system, everything is all unique, so that when the hood side's off, the latching mechanism is underneath the hood top. Normally when you have a hood side that's permanent like that, it wasn't attached to the hood tops. Usually you see the bar that they attach to. Well, I had made a setup so that it fit up above the belt line. So what I wanted to do, my goal was to try to get the car seen with that engine, because I thought that engine, that nail head with the Hillboard ejected nail head, I thought it was such a cool looking engine. So I thought my intention was to get it seen with that engine a little bit. I realized that it looks better with hood sides, but I wanted you to know there was something cool underneath there before it was all hidden up, all hidden. So I intentionally tried to do a little bit without the hood sides on it, and then from then on, once people kind of knew the car, you got the hood sides on, and then it, but everybody kind of knows what's there. It was kind of like Floyd Williams Roadster. That car had a hood from day one.
Yep.
And what's funny about that one is that I had painted the hood tops on that car, but never painted the hood sides, and convinced them, why don't you run without a hood for a while? It looks so badass with that, and we'll put the hood on it whenever you're ready, no problem, And then hoping he would never want to put the hood on it, because then I'd never have to paint the hood sides and sand and buff the louvers. Well, a couple of years back, he finally, said, okay, let's put the hood on it, and so I had to do that. But that was kind of the same thing. They always look better with hoods on them. But when you got a Hillboard injected engine, that looks pretty cool for a while without them.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that was the thought behind it. That's all.
Yeah. Love that car. And I'm not even a huge fan of the Hallebrand kidney beam, the little tiny window wheels, but it just works perfect on that car.
Thanks. I thought so. I thought that was a different wheel, but still kind of a correct wheel,
No, it works. It works. I mean, to me, those wheels will only work on a 40 Willys gasser, but on that car, it was a perfect choice.
Well, you're right. That is a good wheel on a 40 Willys gasser too.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun car, fast, And see, and there again, I tried, my theory with the cars, there again, when you start on one, you kind of want to know what was the backstory, and I actually started building a car for Rich Staff. He owns the car I built for the gentleman in 2002. That car between, after George's Roadster, I built a little Roadster that, anyway, Rich Staff owns. He's out in Washington State. Well, I started this 34 for him before he sold it to George. And the whole thought behind the car is what would you have built in, say, 1969, 1970, if you just had enough money. Usually you never had enough money to build a car back then. So if you had enough money to build the way you wanted, and you had the patience to do it, and maybe just a little more taste than you used to have back in the late 60s, and so you didn't get all crazy. But that was kind of the theory behind that car. So that's why the frame was black. Now it was the as smooth as I could make it. It was really slick and everything, but it was a black frame, thinking that's what you'd probably painted it back then. You know, it just wasn't painted as nice as I did, but that was the whole, you know, and it had a 5-speed in it, but it was a, God, it was like a Doug Nash or whatever. I mean, you know, it's a real shifter type. It's not a Tremec. So, you know, Rich, that was what Rich wanted. He wanted to, you want to know your shift in this car when you do, you know, and then I don't know if you know about the gauges or not, but, you know, we put green line gauges, but we had a classic make us a larger speedometer that was never made, but it looks like a 4.75-4.75 inch green line speedometer. But it was really kind of a neat gauge setup. Oh, green line gauges then.
Yeah. I remember how the tack was mounted on it. I really liked the way that was all done up on the top side of the dash, which you didn't never really see on one of those type of cars, but it just works really well.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I love that car. God, that thing was so much fun. My youngest son, he was the one that was with me when we raced it, and that's the one that if he could get one back, that's the one he wants. You couldn't help but every time you shift it, you know, some cars you get in, you just can't help it. You just want to go fast.
Yeah.
That was one of them.
Yeah, a 33 or 34 has always kind of been one of my bucket list cars. That car inspired me so much. I have a build book, a binder with as much information as I could harvest out of any article I could find on that car, and I put it away on a shelf. I said, one of these days, if I ever build these things, these are some of the ingredients that I'm going to try to maybe work towards or try to utilize some of these ideas. I just like it. It just worked out really well.
Cool. Don't ever hesitate in calling.
Okay. You know, on all your builds, do you have a favorite part of your build? I mean, do you like the mock-up stage? Do you like the final install stage? Or is there any time when you're really having the most fun?
We know it's not the louvers.
No, we know it's not that. No, you know, the thing is that this is where I've been kind of lucky too, is that I like doing all the stages, but usually I'm tired of them by the time I'm done. You know, like building the chassis. I couldn't, in other words, what I couldn't do is I couldn't specialize in something because it gets pretty tough after a while. Not monotonous as much as draining. So it was fun as, you know, you build them basically. I usually just start with 2 frame rails, and I built a jig so that I can just build the car on that. And by the time I'm done building the chassis, I'm kind of done building a chassis for a while. You know, it doesn't come naturally to me. So every bracket is brutal for me. And so, you know, same thing with the exhaust. It takes me a long time to build the exhaust. And by the time the exhaust is done, I'm glad I don't have to do another one for a while. So I think the funnest part is the beginning of every one of those processes, you know, and as that process wears on, like painting, especially painting's the worst. By the time I'm done painting, I don't want to paint, you know, I don't paint nothing, you know, for a while. And by the time the next one's getting ready to be painted, I'm kind of looking forward to it. And then, so what's nice about building a complete car is you get to go through so many different phases. You know, I've got some other friends that don't do anything like this. And this one guy stops out and he just cannot believe that I could work on the same car for 3 years. And I feel like I haven't been building a car for 3 years. I've been building pieces and parts for 3 years. The last 30 days is when it's really, you know, or last 60 days is when it actually starts looking like a car. So, you know, I've been just doing projects. You know, the car I'm doing now, we just passed 3 years last month, and it hasn't felt like the car until the last couple months. So, you know, the fabrication's fun. I just wish it was easier for me. You know, there's guys that can look at a bracket and just, I'm just amazed at what some people can just come out of their head. Just, oh my God, you know, there's a handful of people that are just magicians to me, you know, and to me, it is just a brutal struggle. When I got point A and point B and I got to join it, you know, it's like, I know all the cool stuff when I see it, but God, it's so hard for me to come up with it, you know, and so I always fantasize about building the chassis. And by the time I'm done, I'm like brutally exhausted and anxious to, you know, to do something else, you know, and then same thing with the wiring. I love doing the wiring. But by the time I pull the last wire, it's like, oh man, am I glad I don't have to do that again for a while. And so, you know, that's the fun part about doing it all yourself. And and you get some variety in a long-term project.
Having had the opportunity to work with you before, and one of my favorite things about you is the way you go about color. At what point do you envision the color of the car?
Well, up until this car we're doing now, usually it's the very beginning, and but there again, because I've I don't want to say turned cars away, but I've helped people find other builders that fit better if they want to paint a car or something. I'm pretty straightforward in colors. Let's put it that way. I mean, the kind of cars I'm going to build, you're only going to probably paint them certain handful of colors. Right. I've always admired Roger Ward. He's always been bland when bland wasn't cool, and I say that with the utmost respect. I mean, I some of the cars that he's done have lasted way past the test of time because he didn't get all flamboyant and that kind of thing, and so in my eyes, they're again just the style of car I build. It's only going to be a handful of colors, and they're not going to be crazy colors, and so I think it's pretty easy. I've had, like I said, I've had a couple people that wanted to, maybe their wife or whoever, liked a certain color or whatever, and that's great. And I don't want to convince them not to do it. But but it, as hard as it is to build a car and hard as it is to paint it, I can't be doing a color that I'm not into. You got to put your heart and soul in this, and if you're not into it, then you're not the right guy. You're not going to give them what they deserve, and so I don't know. I like muted stuff. But there again, it comes tough for me. People like Brian. I mean, this stuff is so second nature to you. What you put together is just like I struggle with. It's so hard. And,
I'll trade you.
Oh, believe me, if I had your drawing ability, oh my God,
you'd be terminally depressed.
I can't do a good stick man. I mean, I see it in my head. And when I go to put it on paper, it's just like, that is not what I'm seeing in my head. How come it just doesn't work, I admire the artist, man. I cannot, for the life of me, cannot do that. And it's amazing the guys that can pull that off.
Yeah, we trade it all. And I see what you do, though, is you take the goofy thing that we can put down on paper and you turn it into that reality. So I always wondered, that's a good way to look at this. I always see it, when I see the finished car, to me, it's surreal because, in my head, I'm imagining things from every single angle, but it's not a real car in my head. It's like almost a series of drawings and just individual parts. Mm-hmm. When you see it in person, it's just this very kind of otherworldly thing where you're kind of almost like floating around the car and checking it out in person. I mean, so now for you, on the other hand, do you see the completed car in your head from the get-go? Or is it kind of that work in progress where you have a general idea of where it is, and as you're getting closer, it's really starting to gel in your mind, and you say, bam, this is the finished version. This is what I'm going to build.
I thought about that a lot, and really, let's see, what's the best way to put this? I see the concept. I like I said, when we did the 5 windows, for instance, that black and yellow, the black 5 window with the yellow and white interior, right. He gave me a steering wheel and said, we're going to build a car around the steering wheel. It's a 40 Ford wheel. And actually it was a red one. But he said, we're going to build it. We're going to put a 40 dash. We're going to use this steering wheel. We're going to put wires on it. And that's all he said. And I could, then I just ran with it from there. I could do anything I wanted to do. Well, in my head, those 3 things are going to dictate everything I do. So, to answer your question is, I didn't see the details of the car, but I saw the concept. I saw, it was the same thing with the sedan delivery. I mean, the goal was we're going to try to build the most stark, basic no frills whatsoever, and then make it as nice as possible. There was not even carpet in it, rubber floor mats, but they were going to sink them in the floor, that kind of thing. And so then what happens is that everything you do, it's easy when you're looking at a area that you're going to work on. It's easy to build it because it's going to fit into the concept of the car. So say for instance, on the sedan delivery, the interior, okay, what are we going to do for the inside, for the firewall? I put a second firewall in the car and made it all look like it was the steel one from the outside, make it look like it was just one firewall, and then just make it really look nice. And so everything bolted onto it would look like something that came out of the factory. Just the only thing you're doing different is you're finishing it just as nice as you can. And so, so every bracket you make, you kind of got that feel of where you're headed. So, to me, that's why the most important thing is that, say with the 34, in my eyes, we're building a car that we built in '69. So, you kind of got to get in that frame of mind. You're just going to do it nicer. So then the gauges, we'll put a chrome roll bar in it. Rich found the steering wheel. It was like the perfect steering wheel that you'd bought back then. There again, it was a cheap ass steering wheel, but that's what you would have used. But it was really nice, and so I think in that respect, that's what I see. Because some of these guys, they just see it, and I always thought, how a cool thing if you already know what it's going to look like. But knowing the concept, I think, is just as important. If you know what the thought behind the reason why you're building the car, then and you just keep remembering that, and you don't drag it out, and you're not, there again, the difference, you got to remember the difference in the cars I'm building is I'm not trying to chase the latest and greatest thing. I'm not trying to put the neatest, coolest wheel. I'm using wheels that have been around for 30, 40 years, so it makes it, that kind of thing is so much easier in that respect, because now you got to make sure that the parts that you're not making, you're assembling the right parts of the ones that you are buying or using from the past. And so as long as you kind of follow that theme, the car should be cohesive and make sense. Long answer again.
No.
This is great because you're explaining everything. This is how it's supposed to be. That's awesome. That's a great answer.
All right. I just want you guys thinking, oh my God, we asked a guy a question. You can give us a short answer once in a while.
No, this is.
Oh no.
This is what makes the show fun. I mean, I'll sit here all night long and listen to you. I mean,
yeah.
Well, but that's, to me, that's why a lot of times you can see when a car has been built over 10-year time or 15-year time. Sometimes you can see that. A good builder can hide that, but that makes it tough. If you're trying to build something's current, you got to build it fast. Because everything you're doing is time stamped. And and that's why that was another reason why I got lucky falling into the niche I did. I really wasn't I don't want to say I wasn't a 32 guy. I've always loved 32s, but truthfully, I only built one before I built George's Green Roadster. I built mine, and mine was built in 90 days. It was a Westcott body, and I mean, start to finish, it was a 90-day deal, and I scratch built the frame on it and everything. It was nuts. And so when he we decided to do that Green Roadster, I mean, I had a lot to learn, but I got lucky the fact that that's what he wanted, and I realized this could pave the road for me in longevity and a good niche for me to be in, and it just so happened that I had 3 32s lined up, and it just worked out well that way, and I don't know, it worked out well. I never would have thought, because there again, I built my wagon before. I mean, because as a kid, at my age, I mean, I always liked late '60s, early '70s cars, I had a '69 Nova for a while. My cousin had that '70 Chevelle SS. I remember seeing a yellow Chevelle at the pool when I was a little kid, probably in 3rd or 4th grade, and riding my bike to the pool. And he had Mickey Thompsons on it. That's why I'll never forget those wheels and tires. I had Traeger SSs with Mickey Thompsons on it. And that car was like, that was it. That thing was so cool, jacked way up in the back. It was the car of the period. And so, that would have been the car those were the cars I would have fell to, but those weren't people paying to build cars like that, especially in 2000, and 2001 when I started doing this full time, and I just kind of fell into 32. I love 32s, but it wasn't something it just worked out to where, wow, this is a perfect niche to be in. These are great customers and guys that have been in hot rodding forever, I don't know. They're just badass cars, and I always thought the Roadster 32 Roadster quarter panel is like the prettiest thing. I mean, that's why when we put them on the 5-window, I thought that was so cool, because that took the Model A out of a 5-window. That little area right there kind of has a Model A feel, and and by putting that Roadster quarter on, it was like the whole, it just changed that car, in the most subtle way, and I think we chopped that car like 1 inch, I think, and that was another thing that was kind of funny at Indy when we took it there. And I had a guy with a 5-window come over, and he says, I've got a 5-window just like this. It's identical to this car. And I don't know why your car looks different. He went and got his. He parked it right next to the 5-window. He starts looking at it. And I said, we did cut the roof a little bit. Oh, you're kidding me. I didn't, and then he realized it. And so it's one of those things you'd never know, but it looked a little bit better.
If you could have a client come to you with, what would be your dream project? What's something, or should I say, just what's your most off the expected path, the most non-Dave Lane build possible?
Well, first I would have set up until, every car I've done has been a dream, because at first, I got to build a steel 32 Roadster. That to me was just, I could not believe it, and then I was working on a 32 3-window. I could not believe I had a 32 3-window in the shop when I did Alan Button's car. I can't believe I'm allowed to even touch this, much less I'm building it. And so then of course doing a sedan delivery for George, that to me was like, oh my God, it doesn't get any better, and then so every car has been like that. And so, I've kind of, I always wanted to do a B400, but I've kind of lost the feel for that. I used to think that was, George and I had a bunch of drawings done up, and we were getting real close to doing one. And I don't know, I kind of lost the feel for that. But, when you ask that, what I used to think that I would love to do is I'd love to do a restoration on a Delahaye. Yeah, the ones with the big chrome trim across the bottom of the fenders. They're gorgeous cars. And in fact, one time I remember looking at a Hemmings, and I thought, I should try to get one. If I could find a clapped out one and restore it,
Clapped out Delahaye.
I found it. This thing, the ditch would pick it back out of it. Okay, it was so bad. $300,000 they wanted. It's like, okay, so that's not happening. It was like $3,000. It was junk. It was like needed, But I think those things are just the most gorgeous, and it'd be fun to me to restore something like that and just try to make it just perfect, but that won't ever happen. I just restored it. I've got a 65 Mustang Fastback that a Cape Code car, and I did a restoration on that for myself, and I thought a restoration would be kind of a fun challenge. I'd never done anything like that before, and I found out on those kind of cars that wasn't fun at all, because I thought there was like a right and wrong answer. I thought there's one way to do it, so I'm going to make this thing the best one that's ever been done. That kind of, you're not good. I mean, I knew I couldn't, but that's what you're going to try to do. And then you find out there was 10 different ways of doing a certain thing, and they're all arguing about which way is the right way. And chances are there's probably 10 different ways it was done anyway. And so, you kind of find out there was no right and wrong answer. So I kind of lost my, the taste to ever do that again. But a Delahaye, I think those things are just, for a non-hot rod, they're just, I don't know, they're just liquid. I think they're just, I know Rick Doerr's been, doing a bunch of what he's been doing, and those are pretty cars and stuff. But that real Delahaye, I think, is almost untouchable. They're in the league of their own in my eyes. I think they're just phenomenal. And that would be the one if somebody came to me and wanted to do something like that. That would be a pretty cool, crazy challenge.
That would be awesome. I don't know if we have any listeners that have one, but hey, if you do, if you happen to have a roached out Delahaye sitting around.
Still laying in the backyard. Yeah.
How would Big and Little Hallebrands look on a Delahaye? Hillborn injected Delahaye.
Yeah, there you go.
Although
Yeah,
you
I'm
got
not
me
sure.
thinking, when you mentioned the Mustang, I'm going, I almost want to put together an episode now where we can gather a bunch of guys who worked on at different shifts on the line for, say, like, 65 Mustang or a Corvette assembly line, and get these guys together just to figure out what they did different on their shifts and kind of put an end to all those questions. That's what you'd know.
Have you ever looked at the blogs and stuff? You go to the forums.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny. It's messed up. There's so many.
It's crazy.
Go on the Camaro forums, and I tell you, it can be frustrating.
Well, and the thing is, at first, I kind of laughed and chuckling, like it's a bunch of school kids fighting, but and they're 65-year-old guys and they're fighting like little kids. But when you really think about it, I don't blame them because one guy has been doing this for 45 years. He's seen, he's got 45 in his junkyard collection, and he's got a whole bunch of other ones. He's the expert. And then you got another guy that worked at the factory arguing with them, telling them how they did it. And they're probably both right, and that's what you kind of felt bad about is there's a point where you become knowledgeable about, you're going to fight about because and so that was what was kind of discouraging for me is that, I learned, okay, there's 3 factories and mine was done in Medellin and mine was like done in June 11th. And so March was a totally different car. And the bolts you use in the fender could have changed midweek, and so you get all that kind of stuff. And so it was one of these where I just thought there was just like I got all the books and I thought I'm going to nail this thing. And then you find out, oh my God, it is a moving, and unfortunately the car I got was pretty rough, all apart. Then I realized that the only way to do this is you got to find a perfectly original car and then just take it apart and lightly clean it, and then you gotta, because you can find all your markings and stuff and go about, it was a fun thing. And the fact that I learned so much, but I also learned that it's tough to do a perfect one because there's going to be somebody that tells you that's not how it was done. Even if you know it for sure, that's how it was done. There's going to be somebody that tells you that's not right.
And I think Fords can be a bit of a challenge too, because Ford was pretty notorious for changing things midstream. You go into a parts store and you got a Ford, you better know what month that thing was made.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
We always used to laugh because Ford's old motto was, "Oh, Ford, we have a better idea." Yeah, okay. You just stop changing it. Yeah.
Oh, well, listen, we're going to invoke our better idea tomorrow. Just
right. Yeah, exactly.
They keep getting better ideas. It's like, oh, wait a minute here.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, that I did find that out too. And there's a guy. In fact, I got the book right here. There's a guy that wrote. Where is that? Tony Gregory has the high performance. Oh no, I don't have it. I don't have that book here. There's like this big, thick book on engines, on Ford engines, and it's just a small. I can't remember the years and all the changes. This guy, I can't. He must be insane because it's like an inch thick, and he goes through every change. And when they did it, it's like, oh my God, buddy, I don't know how, And then he's got the back of it, the list of corrections they had to do after the printing or whatever, and that's pretty, and it's just like, oh my God, this guy didn't quit. He just kept on and on, and I can't believe. I mean, it was amazing. But you're right. I mean, he just made so many changes, and if you don't know everything, good luck. I mean, it's. And that's how that car was. In fact, I took it out. We have a place out in Queen Creek, and I took it out there over Christmas and left it. I got to drive it. I drove it all out there. The time I was out there for Christmas for about a week, and it's such a fun car to just race around. It's a pretty quick little car, and so I'm anxious that when I could get back out there again and drive it some more. It's just it's just totally original. I mean, I put better shocks on it, but I'm painting them so you can't tell. But other than that, it's just little restorations. So just like sweet little 65 out of the factory,
Well, it's only a couple miles away from here. You could, you could always leave it at, Brian's house.
Yeah.
He's only got one car in his garage. He's got room for it.
Just throwing it out there.
Because you're in Queen Creek, aren't you?
I'm in Gilbert, yeah, right by the Queen Creek border, I guess, if you want to put it, as where the two kind of meld together, because we don't have like a border war between the Queen Creekites and
Oh yeah.
the Gilbertonians.
Oh.
Well, then we're not very far apart.
You guys want to hug and get it over with? Or
We have
what?
a special fist bump we're doing right now. on the
Slumber
air.
party.
Well, I wish I was there right now.
It's probably warmer at Brian's house than
Oh
it is
my
at your
God.
house. I'm
We're
sure.
getting hammered. We're getting hammered right now again. Getting a bunch of snow.
Well, while you're digging out, just know that I'll be down here swapping Delahaye fenders onto that fastback for you. That's going to end the whole problem as to if you have the right wheel covers or not. Nobody's ever going to know.
There you go. Yeah.
He's gonna put Cougar taillights on it and tell everybody it's a Shelby.
Yeah, there you go.
The best part is I'm going to put them in the rear window. It's a midweek car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the other thing, is they were building them so fast that they didn't care. I mean, they were just, cranking them out, and they weren't the best built cars as it was. So
No.
who knows what they really did, But yeah, I just looked it up. A 38 Delahaye. I think that's one of them. That's pretty amazing looking car.
It's a good start.
Yep, that ain't gonna happen. But they're a beautiful piece. But yeah, I've been fortunate enough that the cars that I've built basically have all been kind of mine anyway. So I've kind of been able to just build my dream cars, and the owners they luckily they wanted the same thing, so it's always worked out pretty well, Because I always thought, what's interesting is if you talk to a builder, and you're looking at a car they built, and they'll say, well, that's what the owner wanted to do. I mean, he's saying a lot right there. Typically when he's saying it, I mean, it depends on how he says it. If it's on something that you said, oh my God, that is so cool and stuff, But a lot of times you could say, well, why'd you do that right there? Well, that's what the owner wanted. Well, he's saying that, he didn't have a choice. He, wasn't consulted or whatever, and or he's forced to do that. And I've never, if you ever ask me what any cars have done, I've never said that. I've never, I own up to everything that's been done, even if the owner suggests, if there's something the owner wanted, that's great. But I luckily I've never had to do something that I wasn't behind 100%. I mean, we've always been on the same sheet of music, and to me that's key. If you're not, it's not a good thing. I remember Barry telling some stories. And the one time a guy said he wanted a car anything but black. He wanted whatever color he wanted, and Barry painted a car. The guy did not want the color, and Barry insisted that's what color, and Barry knew colors. I mean, so he's right. But the problem is that you just wish the owner wants the same thing. I mean, that's the biggest thing is you don't want to force the owner to do something they don't want to do, but you hope they want to do the same thing so that you're not making a mistake.
Yeah.
And that's what George. That's what's good about George. I mean, he is so smart about that. Is that he gives the builder enough rope, and then you can do with it what you want. You can hang yourself with it, or you can work and make it to your advantage, and that's up to you. And so he's smart about that. He picks builders according to what kind of style of car he's thinking about. He doesn't force them to do stuff that outside of their expertise, more or less. And then, because the first car I built for him was kind of funny, I'd ask him questions and everything in that Roadster, because I just figured he's done a bunch of these things. And so, okay, what kind of rear end do you want to use? What do you want? And I just email him these questions. And finally I get one back that says, boy, you ask a lot of questions, don't you? And I'm thinking, that is not good. And from then on I stopped. I thought, and he always said, if you got to ask me, then why don't I pick you? You should be able to figure this stuff out. And so I took that to heart. That was, and so that's, and that's where I've been kind of lucky, the customers, and that's where good, I think smart people would be better off, is you find the builder, you gotta trust them. And then you got to know that they want the same thing you do, and then you should let them go. And you put all the burden, you put all the burden on the builder's shoulders, and you're going to get good work if they care, because it's their name on it. And you know, if the owner wants to take a lot of the responsibility as the build goes on, then, you know, it makes it, you know, flaws get okayed, I guess would be the best way to put it. You know, if like George never sees the cars that I would do until they were done. You know, he hardly ever saw any car in building in progress. And so if there was something wrong, it's not his fault. I mean, he didn't bless off on it. You know, I didn't show him, say, hey, what do you think about that? Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. Well, you know, if none of that's going on during the build, then when it's finished and something doesn't fit right, you know, he's not the kind of guy that's going to say bad things or nothing, but there's no excuse for it. I mean, you know, and so if you're a builder that cares, there's no excuse for why that panel doesn't line up. He wasn't standing over you telling you to hurry up. He wasn't, you know, that's all on you. So, you know, I think a lot of people could kind of learn from that, you know. But you gotta pick a guy that really cares, so that they're going to give you the best, and then you let them go, let them run.
Well, thanks. I think that's awesome advice too for someone just starting out, because I think a lot of guys grasp that until later in their career. I think on a lot of levels too.
Yeah.
You know, thank you.
Yeah. And to me, I think the other advice I always try to give guys that are just starting stuff is that you got to be so picky on customers, you know, because, you know, there's some people you're never going to make happy. You know, there's some people that it's kind of funny. It doesn't, you know, no matter what, they're going to complain about something. So even if the car is perfect, then it costs too much. I mean, you know, and so you got to try to find people that are going to be that are trying to look at this in the right light and realizing this is a hobby, this will be fun. So, you know, I don't know, a bad customer relationship can be pretty devastating for business, you know. And if you take bad projects, then when the good one comes along, you're too busy. And so you got to learn to say no. And the pickier you get, because the car you build is what's gonna draw the next customer. And so always look at it like that's your advertisement. So whatever you build, that's the kind of person you're looking for the next project. And, you know, I think that if you can do that, I think that really works good in the long run. You know, one thing I wanted to ask you guys, because I kind of live holed up in my shop and don't have a lot of visitors, don't talk to a lot of people about this stuff much. What, you know, but I'm always thinking about costs and what cars cost and everything. And what do you, when you think about what a high dollar build is, what is that figure? What do you think when would be a considered high end? You know,
what type of car?
Well, let's say, you know, a Camaro, you know, even like a 69 Camaro, that, you know, like a Detroit Speed. Let's, you know, I'm not talking about your ultimate crazy high end, but when you hear somebody, they're okay, that's kind of a high end car. Where do you figure that dollar figure starts? So let's say in a Camaro, 67, 89 Camaro, first gen,
like super nice paint.
I think once
great
you're
engine,
getting past say 200 grand, you're starting to play with the big boys. Once you get past that number.
Well,
right.
Okay.
That's the kind of number
at this point,
head.
It's kind of like, I think it's like the general consensus when you get into like almost an entry level car now, and the higher end is considered like 2.25, 2.5.
Okay.
Which to me is crazy, because I'm a single dad. So for me, you know, you say, what to use a high end car? I'm like $3,000.
Yeah. Well, see, you know, I'm so glad to hear you guys say that. I was always curious that, you know, because what kills me is then you look at what you could buy for that. Yeah. You know, I'm talking like Ferrari. So you could have a Ferrari sitting in your garage and everybody in the world would know that's an expensive car. Or you can have Camaro. And not that it matters what people know, but I'm just looking at it like what looks like what it costs, you know. Or you can have Camaro, that one people think you got about 50 grand in it, you know, and plus, you know, you kind of lose perspective because there again, I build cars that I could never afford, you know, and so I lose perspective, and so you guys are right where I was thinking, and so I was relieved to hear. I didn't have any idea where that number started, and you know, but to me, it's always been it's perspective. I mean, it's all relative, you know. You know, some people get all crazy about how much money people got in cars, but it's all relative to what you have. And so if you got a lot of money, then 200 grand is not as much. Yeah. I thank God they're out there spending the money because that's what keeps us holding the industry moving, you know. And not that they're the sole people, but we need them. We need them just like we need everybody else. And so I never had any animosity towards that kind of thing. You know, George, you know, got lots of money, but he's also one of the biggest car guys there ever been, you know. And so I hear people bashing him about his money. I just think that's when the ignorance should just fly in at that point, because they don't. If you knew how stupid you're sounding right now, you know. Yeah. And so, you know,
or if the roles were reversed and you were George, what would you do? Sit and not spend any money because you don't want anybody to think anything? No, you'd go and do exactly what he's doing.
Exactly.
And it's not just that, too. You consider it was guys like George and a lot of the guys who were out there who kept this industry rolling through a really rough patch around 2008.
Exactly.
They're the ones, if it wasn't for those guys doing it, I don't think we'd have any of the high-end builds that we have today.
Exactly.
That could have died off. And that's, again, I think that goes right back to kind of earlier in the episode. We talked about having, you know, the patrons of the industry. It's those guys that do that. And again, it's the pie in the sky builds, these $1 million+ builds that give us all something to aspire to. And then at one point, think about it, probably a high-end build was, you know, I said, man, you had $100 grand into your car. How did you do that?
Remember that? I remember when stainless steel brake lines, if you had stainless steel brake lines, you hit the upper echelon.
Yeah.
You know, I remember because when I did that roadster, that green roadster, and I put stainless steel brake lines, I thought, oh my God, I can't believe this. I am building that kind of car, you know, and it wasn't at that level, but it was a big deal, you know, and you're right. And, you know, and in fact, when you say that, because 2008, I was building a sedan delivery for him. I just finished it. He had 23 cars going at that same time. Now, George doesn't need 23 cars. He's the first one to tell you he doesn't care about 23 cars. But he was keeping 23 shops busy, or at least had a project with them, you know, and you're exactly right. I mean, he carried a lot through a rough time.
Yeah. That's the amazing part. I mean, you're pushing that hard. And, you know, and and it was a handful of guys, really.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's why I have a hard time. Anyone who talks smack about that, well, go out, get your own money, do what you want with it.
Yeah. But the thing is there again, if you have that much money, then they bet you about, well, you just writing a check. Well, okay, so serious. Let's say you all of a sudden came into a bunch of money. You're going to sit out in the garage and just piddle away at one little project at a time or something. Now, remember, you got all this money and you only have so much time. You can't buy time. Like, but you're not going to pay anybody to do anything. You're going to just, I'm sorry, that is not the case. I mean, you know, if all of a sudden landed a bunch of money, sure, I'll piddle around the shop a little bit, but I'm going to be writing checks to some other people. I don't need some, you know. And if I can pay Troy or whoever to build me something like that, we're going for it, you know. And so that's what's, you know, I thank God they're out there, you know, and you know, they do. They keep everything moving ahead, and I mean, look at everything that Boyd did, and if it wasn't for the wealthy customers he had, I mean, where would we be today? I mean, you know, he legitimized the sport when it come to making it okay for a guy to tell, you know, a guy with some money to tell people, I've got this hot rod over here, and that wasn't a bad thing anymore. That was something that was a cool thing now, and thank God for that. You know, I mean, I get to do this job, and it was partly because of people like that, you know, but the thing is, it's just, you know, so, you know, I just kind of curious because to me, a couple $100,000 in a Camaro is just crazy, but I understand how it happens. But it's just oh my God, you know. But that's what it takes if you're going to do a upper end, you know. You think you're going to do it cheap, and you find out the stuff starts adding up, and it just keeps adding, and it don't quit. And it's brutal. It's just brutal. Adam Krause helped me out. Actually, I don't like to paint any cars for me, because then I never have fun with them. So he painted that Mustang for me. And in fact, I had a different friend paint my Galaxy for me. I can never look at a car that I painted and not pick it apart. And I didn't want to pick those cars apart. I wanted to just enjoy them and have fun with them, And so, Adam did that Mustang for me, and just he's just such a great guy. And we talk, and he says his worst time of the month is every month he's got to do the invoice. You just hate it because there's so many hours, and it's so hard to justify, and you just hate handing to people the bill, but he works hard for it, and so you gotta learn to get over it, but it's still tough.
Right on. It's tough on my side too.
Oh, I bet. I bet. I mean, it's but artwork is so smart, because it's cheap compared to making something and making it again and making it again, and it looks bad. Pay up front, figure out what you're going to do, and make it once. And and you spend the money up front, and you save it in the long run.
Exactly.
And once you have somebody that's been through the rodeo a couple times, they realize that. But it's the stuff, I think the first time guy, it's probably a little harder to understand that. But that's that's smart. I like that when you post those, Brian, of the pictures of the cars that have been done, and then you start posting the stuff that you did, like on Andy's Model A and stuff, and all of a sudden you see the drawings that you did are just so cool.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and I just think it's helpful for somebody who's starting a project to kind of understand what goes into it intellectually and planning wise. I think it's a helpful thing for them. And for me, it's not like an ego thing, because I hate looking back on some of the sketches. Some are so rough and loose. But I think it's a very important part of the project that a lot of people still overlook. And I I'm not saying it because it's something I do. And there's a lot of talented guys out there who do it as well. But it's I still think it's one of the most important parts of any project. If you can get that communication, especially between owner, builder, designer, and everything in one place, it saves a whole lot of crossed wires.
Yep. And there again, you start talking about what some of these cars start costing. So then, the percentage of what you're spending on that artwork compared to the overall cost starts getting to be pretty low. It's a pretty small percentage, but it's such a huge impact. And there again, and the money it can save, going down different rat holes that you shouldn't be, you should be headed down and making things and then remaking them and that kind of stuff. I mean, that to me is expensive. I hate wasting money, and wasting time is wasting money. And the smartest thing people can do, best thing they could do is they can sit down with you and a builder at the same time before they've turned one screw, before they nail down the exact project. And boy, you talk about that makes so much sense in the long run.
Definitely. It's even better when you get along with the builder.
Is that tough? Is that tough for you sometimes?
It's rare. I mean, I've gotten to a point where you can you get a select group of guys you can work with and work with really easily. So you get your comfort zone. Sometimes you work with a new builder, someone you've never worked with before, and there's a little bit of headbutting that goes on. They might see it one way, and it might be something you've done 40 different times on paper, and you just know it's never going to work.
Yeah.
So, and there becomes an ego thing. A builder might say, no, it's totally going to work this time, and they're 2/3 of the way through it in the metal phase, and, you just kind of want to go, remember this? Like,
yep.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so.
and I hate being that guy because I always want to push the envelope. I just want something to be the best possible thing it can be.
Yep.
And for me, it's a lot of understanding. With my background, I get where you're at, billable hours, materials, things like that. all that's going through my head while I'm drawing. So I might approach a drawing a little bit different than someone else, where they're like, oh, we can totally put this 57 Buick grill into this 2002 Taurus, and it's going to look super bitchin'. And me, I'm going, so many levels, no. But,
But I've never seen it done before.
ZR1 taillights, yeah.
Those are going to look great in the rear pan of a Chevy pickup truck.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, but there is something, I totally understand, because once you've thought something out, you've got enough of yourself invested in this, and you know the direction it's got to take. You can't help but kind of take it personally, or at least you want to stand your ground on where this is headed, because look, I've already thought it out. We've already figured this out, and this is what it should be, and stick with me on this. So I can see how I'd be the same way with you. I could see where it gets, you want to just say, okay, then screw it, then I'm done, I'm out of here, because it's headed in the wrong direction, and I know where you're headed, and it's bad, and so I can see that'd be tough for you.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, I always try to make it really easy, though. You and I have worked together on a couple little things, and it's so much easier when you can just talk and throw ideas back and forth. And I think that falls under, there's just you start to gain a mutual respect when you know what someone's vision is. I think you start off, you kind of feel them out a little bit. You're like, well, oh, you think that a 57 Buick grill is going to look good in that Taurus? Yeah, I'm not going to respect you that much, but I'll respect you maybe some other way. So you're kind of feeling each other out. And eventually you kind of get a flow of ideas. Things start to go back and forth. And you find a comfort zone.
Yeah.
I think and it's probably, it's that way with any part of the business, I think. You get that way with your parts suppliers. You get that way with your client. You kind of get that way when you realize what's going on between the client and their wife when you're trying to build the car. The wife isn't behind the car. So it's a weird thing. I think that, God, we need this would be a great book, The Psychology of Hot Rods. I think we could score. This would be a bestseller.
Tell me about your builder.
Oh my.
Do you often have dreams of your builder? Yes. What is he wearing? Now that you mention it. No. Hey, wait a second. You lived in Germany for a while. Can you say that in German?
No, I tried to learn the language, but we lived in Heidelberg, and it's so Americanized that the minute you start stumbling out any kind of German words, then they would quickly start speaking English. It's like, oh man, okay, all right. But that was the best place, man. I love the Autobahn. That was just amazing. We had a little 190E Mercedes, and over there they're hot rods. They didn't have air and cruise or anything like that. They're just fast cars. And so, I mean, I love when you pull onto the Autobahn. It's just like an off ramp and on ramps like we have, here. And you'd go through the gears. I wouldn't hit fifth until I hit 100. And you are pulling on like you're pulling onto a track coming out of the pits. And it was the best. I mean, we lived 100 miles away from Switzerland, and I could make it an hour. And that was kind of bumper to bumper. And there was a lot of stretches where it was really pretty tight. And we could average 100 miles an hour. Wow. It was so much fun, man. I didn't really care that, my wife liked to do a lot of traveling stuff. I just liked to get there. And then whenever it's time to go, let me know. And the driving part was pretty amazing. That was pretty fun. But it didn't have a shop or nothing, so that part of it drove me crazy. But yeah, the speed was crazy fun, man. God,
I want to do that someday.
Hey, Dave, thank you for doing this with us, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the invite. I enjoyed it. I hope I didn't talk you guys' ear off too bad.
Oh
No.
Thank you, though, man. You gave us far more than that. Well, I mean, I was expecting a lot. Don't get me wrong, but man, thank you. A lot of great insight. I appreciate you opening up like that.
No problem at all. Very enjoyable. That was nice.
Well, awesome, sir. Thank you so much.
Cool. You're welcome. Thank you.
And when I go before the town board, I'm gonna express to them how the Queen Creekoids aren't nearly as bad as we think they are. Queen Creekites, oids, Queen Creek.
Reminds me of the hemorrhoids, so we can go with the oids.
Creakians.
The Queen Creekians. Yeah, that's not to be Sun City because they're a little creaky over there.
Creakinos.
Creakinos. Oh my god. I kind of like it. I thought it was, a little more. It was kind of. It seemed like, there's a lot of horses and that kind of stuff. Not that we're into horses, but we're kind of on the country, and so I felt like it was. I don't know. It seemed like a pretty good fit, but we've only had that house out there for a year, and I've only been there. I only got to go once, so it's our retirement home. So someday I get to go there forever, and can't wait. But
very nice. Good area to retire to.
What?
Good area to retire to.
I think so. But I liked Gilbert. Gilbert's good. We lived right off of Higley and Gilbert, and right over by the high school there, and that's a nice area too. That little downtown in Gilbert's really cool.
It's grown too. It's pretty nice now. I'm happy. It's a good little area, and I figure one day I'll just I'll never retire. I'll be working till the day I finally just cash in. But okay.
Yeah.
There are worse places.
Oh yeah, I can tell you about one. Look at that, about 8 inches of snow out there. So
I grew up in that crap. I will never go back.
Where'd you grow up at, Brian?
Buffalo, New York.
Did you? Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh my God.
Yes, if you ever say that, Brian could take a lot of abuse. That's why.
Yeah. He sure likes hot wings. Oh, sorry.
He loves hot wings and losing sports teams. That guy.
That guy.
That was good.
Oh,
that's all it is. I'm just one big stereotype. Well, you throw that in. Plus, I'm a Polak, so I'm like the butt of every joke.
Yeah.
Just get it from every angle. Doesn't matter.
Pickled hot wings.
Oh God.
Those are the traditionalists.
Yeah.
You gotta eat those with blue cheese, though. So.
Oh,
just gets better. You do that before you go out and shovel 46 inches of snow.
Oh.
Yeah, Buffalo was good at that too, wasn't it?
Pass. Yeah, it sucked. When you said you're working, out in a garage when it's 30 below, I remember laying in a driveway, swapping out the gas tank in my buddy's Firebird, and it was 40 below with the wind chill.
Oh, damn.
Oh.
And to this day, if I think about that, every part of my body just hurts. And I remember literally trying to huddle as close as I could to the halogen work light for warmth. It's like that puts off a little bit of heat. Oh, it's kind of warm. That's toasty.
I replaced a head gasket in the Datsun out in the driveway of 12 below.
Oh man.
Been there, done that. So yeah.
I remember my wife's Maverick. We had to replace the heater core in that. That was outside, and I know it was negative numbers, but I think we were just like -1 or something. So it was warm compared to you guys. Any freeze don't freeze though. So anything you got wet, you got cold.
And I don't harbor a grudge, but I just remember laying out there and looking around, going, all I needed was the wrench to, start putting the straps back together and get that thing back up. And I'm yelling for it, and my buddy's gone. And I go, where the hell did he go? Maybe he froze to death. Well, I get inside. This guy's sitting there literally drinking the biggest cup of hot chocolate I've ever seen in my entire life. I just remember standing in the doorway going, seriously? Like, literally, cells in my body have frozen to death.
Yep.
And I think part of me never grew back, really, to what it could have been. We'll never know.
Yep.
That's got personal. We're back to that again.
That's why Queen Creek is looking so good.
Well, awesome, man. You, sir, thank you for joining us. Thank you for making this an awesome. What are we on episode? We're on episode 43. Holy cow!
Wow.
Thank
cool,
you for
guys.
joining us.
Well, thank you.
And we look forward
Sure
to it.
appreciate
We'd love to have you back. And like I said, we'll talk about cars we can't talk about. And
Yeah, give me a holler anytime.
awesome. Well, thanks, Dave.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you, sir. It was great.
Great.
No problem. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate it, guys.
Awesome, man. Have a great night, sir.
All right. Well, take care. You
Talk to
too.
you, sir.
All right, man. Thank
All
you.
All right, see you.
Bye. Big thanks again to our guest tonight, Dave Lane of Fast Lane Rod Shop, one of the premier builders in the world, I would venture to say. Great guy. Can't say thanks enough, man. Guys,
Yeah.
I'm kind of speechless.
It was a fun show. It was a guy that I'd been wanting to talk with for a long time, and he was fantastic. Yeah, it was great.
Indeed, a lot of great input from obviously not just a great builder, but obviously a guy who's run a great business and figured out a great way to do that.
Yeah.
I think we touched on a lot of stuff that you never really talk about in the hot rod world.
Yep. Yeah. It was cool to kind of hear him talk about how he started, his influences, because he's got a certain style that, is his own. And it was really cool to hear how that all came to be. And it was awesome.
Great guy.
Dude. Well, hey, at the end of this episode, oh, hey, when you're listening to this, as this one launches, we will be in, well, hopefully sunny Pomona for the Grand National Roadster Show. What is our booth number? We are building 6,
102.
booth 1.
Right across from 10 cars that Mr. Foose is bringing in.
That's right, the Chip Foose, what is it, the builder of the decade? Holy crap, dude.
If you
Yes,
smell
yeah.
beef jerky, you're right next to us.
That's right, oh yeah, because that's right, we got beef jerky, cutlery,
Yeah.
some guy named Scratch who does
Scratch.
pinstripey stuff.
Roadster Shop.
Roadster Shop is right down the hall.
Ford Motor Company's in the same booth, in the building.
Hopefully they'll bring their SEMA display.
Right next to Dan Shuck, because that just seems fitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan.
Or
Chuck
if they
and
turn
Ford.
each other's power off. Go unplug their display.
but swing on by, check out our. I know we're all proud of it, and for good reason. You guys did a phenomenal job putting your work into it this week and the week before, because we basically had 3 weeks to put together a full-on booth, and I would dare say that my partners in crime here, I think we pulled off something really cool.
Mhm.
I think you guys are going to dig the booth.
Yeah. Yeah, your design work and a lot of the things that Brad did too, it's really going to look awesome. I mean, nice job. Nice job.
Thanks, man. And if you get done, dude, you've done a ton of crap, dude. You've done stuff that it makes a huge difference, but you'd never really get to see it, which is sad.
That's all right.
But without it, you wouldn't get to see the stuff you do. Ooh,
Ooh.
there you go, man. But yeah, stop by, see us. We will have a plethora of stickers and other goofy crap. But swing by. We'll be recording all weekend and doing a lot of this. By that I mean recording, not sitting in silence. Yeah, we're just going to record outros all weekend. Thanks for joining us. Take 65. Hey, thanks for joining us. No,
We're
but
We're going to mime every episode.
Yeah, it'll be all about electric cars. It'll be awesome.
Some real out of the box thinking.
Done. On that note, thanks again, Dave, for joining us tonight. Thank you, our listeners, for listening to us and supporting this mess. And hope to see you guys at the show. At the end of episode 43, I am a much more ventilated Brian.
I'm a very subtly chopped Brad.
And I'm still Alex. You guys keep stealing my idea.
We didn't come out and say I'm
Next
a
time I'm
small
going
window
first.
Alex. I'll catch you guys next time.
All right.
Thanks again for listening, and be sure to keep up with us gearheads over on our website at www.round6pod.com. And if you'd like to, we invite you to follow along with us over on Facebook, Instagram, and be sure to check out all of our latest videos on youtube.com.